Today I'm joined by two special people for me, myself, starting with Dr. Helen K. Bunn from UK, Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh to be more specific, and real theologian Luis Jovel, a friend of mine for a good while. He's joining us from Australia. He's an Aussie.
Yeah, well, I have an
So
Australian passport now, so I'm an
yeah,
Australian.
yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. Pretty sure about that. Okay, so everybody, today we have a special treat for you. We're gonna be talking about Dr. Helen's 2020 book, the first biography of Jesus Christ. I mean, this is the guy, as Bud Ehrman used to say, probably the most influential figure in Western society, and I would even go and say the world. I mean, it's Jesus Christ. So today we're going to be addressing that book, asking some questions to Dr. Bond, and something that I couldn't just let it go. It's this thing that we need to be, what's the word? We need to be better interpreters of the Gospels, and the scholars out there, just like Dr. Bond, they are helping us to do just that. I mean, there's a lot of what can we say? New insights, interpretations, methods that we need to catch up with that. And I think Dr. Bunn's book is giving a huge of a contribution to just that. Okay, and yeah, it's not without criticism, which is okay because this is academia. I'm pretty sure
Mm.
Dr. Bunn, she's okay with that. But overall, I think it's as I can see in the blurbs there, it's a great contribution to the discussion about what's the genre and the meaning of the first gospel, in this case, Mark. Dr. Bunn, just very quick, should I take that subtitle? I mean, are you taking a Mark and priority just to get
Oh
into
yeah,
things here?
definitely. And I mean, you talk about Jesus being the most influential figure ever, but I think the fact that Mark is the first to write the life of Jesus also is
Yeah,
really significant. That's one of the things that kept sort of, being really, I suppose, surprising to me that, this person
yeah,
who writes the first biography of Jesus, or at least the first one we've got, is also hugely significant.
I agree. I agree with that. Okay, so we're gonna hit the intro. Everybody, just buckle up. We're
Mm.
we're ready to go to jumping into things here. So here we go. Okay, everybody, welcome back to your Verano 1711 podcast. I should say that in Spanish. uh, Today, we are having a special topic. Remember, this is a podcast where we talk about religion because it's important, but critically analyze it because that's even more important. Today, we're going to be talking about Dr. Helen K. Bond's first biography of Jesus, meaning genre and meaning on this book. Dr. Helen, welcome to the show. It's an honor. I'm pretty sure Luis Jovel agrees with me. It's an honor to have you on. How are you
Yes,
doing today?
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
yes. The first time I was aware of your system, Helen, was when I did a historical Jesus, and we had your book as an introduction.
Yeah,
Oh,
And,
yes.
for the perplex.
And the perplexed. Yes.
Yes.
I enjoyed writing that book. It was trying to
that's
get all my ideas about historical Jesus sort of in line and into some kind of a system.
it's fun.
Mm.
If I can chime in here, it's foundational. I mean, I'm very interested in historical Jesus stuff. More importantly, because every now and then you keep running into people. I'm not gonna say the word because I want to be just cool, but you keep running into people who said, "Well, Jesus, that guy from Galilee, probably he didn't exist," and I'm
Yeah.
like, think again. You should think again that, okay? But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we are with the consensus here, and Dr. Bonds, she is better. She's a legitimate scholar. She can instruct us better than anybody here. That the consensus is that, I mean, even Bud Ehrman, he's an agnostic atheist. He has no bone to pick here, and he wrote a whole book just arguing for the existence of this guy. So what else do you want? So yeah. So, Dr. Bun, just give our audience a bit of a background, who you are, your credentials. We would like you to introduce yourself. Please give us what's that?
Okay. So I'm professor of Christian origins, which is
Yeah,
basically New Testament, but it's, I suppose, the beginnings of the Christian movement for the first 100 years or so. So I'm professor of Christian origins at the University of Edinburgh, and I've been here
yeah.
25 years, which is really scary. I'm originally from the northeast of England, and I did my studies at the University of St Andrews and University of Durham under Jimmy Dunn, and worked with
The
Martin
great
Hengel
Jimmy Dunn. Yeah,
at Tübingen as well. So yeah, so I've been here for a long time, and I work particularly on the Gospels, also on the historical Jesus, but I'm also very interested in the general sort of social history and political history of the first century. So Josephus is a big topic for me, the Herods, that kind of thing.
yeah,
And I run a weekly podcast with the great journalist Dave Roos called Biblical Time Machine. So
yeah.
to do with the Bible.
Let's give it a plug. Thank you, thank you. Well, I'm not sure, Luis Jovel, what was his first encounter with Dr. Bond, but I remember the, what I can recollect now. It's one of the first encounters with Dr. Helen Bond was with the late Larry Hurtado. You guys have a YouTube channel, and I remember you were discussing something there very important. Yeah, so also, by the way, you wrote one of the, I think it's a 3 volume on the Jesus in the first 3 centuries. You wrote that on Josephus. Am I right?
No, you're right. There, we've got a 3 volume thing on receptions of the Jesus tradition in the first three
Okay.
centuries, and I edited that with Chris Keith. He was the sort of the one who organised it all. Jens
Got
Schroeder
you.
and Christina. Oh, I can't remember her surname from Berlin. So there were we were the joint editors, and I had particular responsibility for the first volume, which was the first century or so of Jesus traditions. Yeah, so big, beautifully produced books by Bloomsbury.
Yeah, it's a
Chunky.
massive collaboration there. Yeah,
I think it's
definitely.
about, I don't know, over 1 million words or something, however many million words. It's
Oh
big.
my goodness. uh, I mean, I know the other. I think it was Jens. I don't know how to say in German.
Jens Schroeder.
Yeah. Thank you. Christine Jacobi and
Yeah,
Jens.
Christina
How do
Jacobi.
you say that in German? Scott? I don't know. I'm not gonna try it. I probably I would butcher it. But this guys also came out with I think it's a translation from the German Jesus Handbook. Uh,
Yeah,
it's another great resource for those
yes.
historical
Yeah.
Jesus geeks. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely. Okay, well, with that in mind, Luis Jovel, I don't know if you got something to say before we can go into the questions. Let me know.
No, I'm fine. I'm very impressed with you, Helen. Every week, like I said, I hear you, and I can hear your Josephus one-sided. What I mean, what I mean is your preferences of Josephus, because of course you study a lot about him. So this week I was listening to some people saying that and I remember that too, when the temple fell at 70, Josephus records that he saw chariots in heaven
Mm.
and Tacitus as well. So I mean, is this is out of the subject, but maybe you can tell me, is that historical reliable, or just Josephus trying to make it even, to make a point somewhere?
Well, it depends what you mean by historically reliable. But I think what
Yeah.
this is trying to say there is, he's wanting to say that the temple fell in Jerusalem because God allowed it to, because
Mm,
God abandoned his people and allowed the Romans now to come and take over. But God is still in charge. God
mm,
leaves the temple. He allows the Romans to come in, but it's only for a short time. God is going to come back, and the Romans are going to get their comeuppance. So I think it's all picture language to describe the theology.
mm.
I don't know that we would actually think, oh, there are chariots that we can see, but it's like a visionary experience to try and explain
Mm.
the
Yes.
theology of it, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something to warm up. Okay, so we're gonna go into the questions, Dr. Bun, if you're okay with that. We're right here at you. So here we go. So, Dr. Bun, in your first chapter, you write about Mark as a bios. Okay, in it, you go from Botov. I don't know how to say. You can correct me on that. K.L. Schmidt,
Oh, yeah.
on their mayor, Keener, and others, including most notably Burridge. The last 25 years. Please tell us more about this chapter. How that started.
Yeah, well, I have the book here.
Yeah,
Do
Mm.
you want to have a look? So
yeah,
the first chapter is really setting the scene. So what
yes,
struck me as interesting was that for the first sort of 1900 years or so a long time, people just sort of assumed that the Gospels were biographies, the lives of Jesus. They were the account of somebody's life. And Votow was this sort of Chicago professor, early 20th century, who started to look at the Gospels and compare them with ancient biographies. But just as he was getting going, then we have the start of what's known as form criticism. This sort of idea very much associated with people like Rudolf Bultmann and K.L. Schmidt and Dibelius in Germany, that the Gospels are made up of floating little bits of oral tradition, and the Gospel writers are not proper authors, they're just editors, and they just wrote down these pieces of floating oral tradition. And it was very much one of the things that the form critics said, that the Gospel writers they're just editors, compilers, they're not biographers, and the Gospels are not they're not literary biographies, they're just collections of material. And so this was the way that people tended to see the Gospels for a long time. And even when form criticism had started to fall away and people were more interested in redaction criticism or seeing the Gospels as narratives even, this idea that the Gospels were not biography still sort of proved to be really important. People still kept repeating it. And I think one of the attractions of it, even for people who were really quite conservative Christians and didn't like what the form critics were doing at all, was that the form critics said a unique literary genre for a unique message. And I think people kind of liked that, oh yeah, stuff about Jesus is unique, it's not like anything else. And so for a long time, this idea that the Gospels are not biography persisted. And then things started to change around about the 70s, 80s. People like Charles Talbot, David Orney started asking, really, are the Gospels not biography? Because they seem very like biographies. They're the life of a person in a sort of a broadly historical type narrative. They look very much like biography. And so this idea about Gospels as biography gained more momentum. And then I suppose the person who's often credited with sort of, really sealing the deal is Richard Burridge, who wrote his book, What Are the Gospels, 25 years ago now. And really comparing lots of different features in the Gospels with ancient biography, and showing that ancient biography is very broad, and it's not sort of one straight jacket. There's all sorts of different ways that a biography can express itself, but broadly speaking, the Gospels are very similar to ancient biographies. And I would say nowadays not everybody thinks that the Gospels are biography, but it's the broad consensus. You don't really have to argue for it too much. And it seems pretty obvious to me. I mean, it's a history type narrative. It's about a person. Also, biography was very, very popular at the time. So I don't think it's at all strange to find the Gospel writers putting together their material in terms of a literary form that was extremely popular at the time.
Thank you for that. And yeah, if I can butt in here, I mean, I have a lot to say, but I mean, that's why I find this material so important and groundbreaking. I mean, and this is for layman people. I mean, I'm a layman, okay? But it is something that we need to, what's the word? Because I want to be kind. We need to be, as I said from the outset, we need to be better interpreters of what we're reading in the Bible, specifically in this case, the Gospels. And this is something that many scholars have been doing, not just now. This is not the first time. I'm pretty sure Dr. Bond, she can give us all the statistics and better information, the data, what's going on within scholarly circles. But I understand that they are starting to put material out there in which they are arguing that these guys, whoever they were, I mean, I understand traditionally people hold they hold that it was Luke, Matthew, Mark, and John. Those guys were the people writing this stuff. That's okay. It's open to debate, and I'm fine with that. But whoever these guys were, they were not dumb. That's my basic view, and that's what I can take away a little bit from your this answer from you, Dr. Bond. This guy, they were geniuses. I mean, literary geniuses, and they are drawing from the literary richness, if I can put it that way, of their time. And we need to know, and we need to get acquainted a little bit more without literature, with those what do you call it, rhetorical devices and whatnot. We need to do just that, okay? And that's what I can understand from this answer from you, Jovel. I don't know if you got something to say to that.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you. Where do you put ancient bios within the Greco-Roman culture and Christianity? Where do they meet and where do they depart?
Well, I'm not sure that they part particularly. I mean, biography was very popular at the time. It sort of emerged in the Hellenistic period, and it became very important. I mean, in Greek circles, people had often written biographies about philosophers. That Socrates was kind of the great philosopher, and stories about his death, and then stories about his life, and other philosophers also had biographies written about them, Pythagoras or Diogenes. And so it became a natural way to talk about a philosopher, which of course is not very dissimilar to what Jesus is. And Romans also got very interested in biography, particularly in the late Republic and then the imperial period, where suddenly everything is dominated by the emperor. There's this rise in interest in the individual. And people start to talk about the great man of history, looking to people and the lives of people as examples, and particularly in terms of the lives of philosophers. If you read out the life of a philosopher, you're looking at their life, their way of life, their teaching. But an important part of ancient biography is moral instruction. So what people are doing through these biographies is to say, look at this life. This is a life you should follow. This is a good example. And I think it's the perfect framework really for the early Christians to put together the life of Jesus and say, look, this is our teacher. This is what he stood for. This is his life and teaching. And this is a good life, a virtuous life, and one that you should follow. And so I think it's not at all surprising that these lives are sort of read out at Christian gatherings, and these then become the sort of the foundational documents of this early movement. I mean, one other project that I have at the moment, actually, with some other women. There's 5 women on this project, and one of the things we're
Sweet.
looking at, yeah, it's nice to get to a stage where you can just invite your friends. So we're looking at, they're all great scholars too, which is
Okay, this is gold.
so we're looking at sort of how different, because I think Mark engages with sort of biography in one particular way, but Matthew, Luke, John, they engage with biography in slightly different ways. John is so full of scriptural quotation. He's just working with the scriptures in such a close way that, how then is that biography? And there's all sorts of interesting questions raised by the different Gospels. And then at some point, sort of in the 2nd century, people stop writing lives of Jesus, and instead they move to writing infancy stories, or collections of sayings of Jesus. And then later on they start to write lives of the saints. So it's hagiographies, lives of the disciples, lives of early Christians. And so it's interesting the way that sort of biography moves about. After a certain point, people stop writing biographies of Jesus, and it's biographies of his followers that they're writing instead. So I think that sort of the Christian engagement with the whole biographical tradition is actually quite an interesting one to sort of chart and look at.
And let me round out this will be a much easier question, because in Latin America we're always told that that the Gospels may not be reliable because they contain miracles. And
Yeah.
do Greco-Roman bios also contain miracles by philosophers?
Yeah. I mean, a good example, one that's quite similar to the Gospels in many ways, is Philostratus's Life of Apollonius of Tyana.
Yes.
He does a number of miracles that are actually very similar to those of Jesus. I mean, to the extent that people have wondered if Philostratus is actually kind of using the gospel miracles to some extent. I don't think people tend to think that now, but Apollonius is said to have been able to raise people from the dead. He can exorcise hobgoblins, as it's sometimes described, demons. And so quite a few, and he has lots of trials at the end, and he has disciples. So really quite similar to what you have in the story of Jesus, but also other characters. I mean, maybe not so much the philosophers, but certainly some of the statesmen and emperors are credited with being able to calm the seas and direct nature. And the Emperor Vespasian actually was said to be able to, there's an occasion where he gave sight to somebody and cured somebody who had a withered, I can't remember if it was a hand or a leg. So again, these stories go around. I mean, exactly the same questions over historicity accompany other things too. I mean, the question is, did they happen? Did they not happen? And it's very difficult to know. I mean, certainly one of the things that these authors are trying to do is to say that, these people have great authority and, such that you could credit them with being able to do these amazing things. I mean, in the case of Jesus, though, I think it's very interesting that what opponents say is not, oh, no, he's not healing anyone. What they say is, yeah, he can heal people, but he's acting with the power of the devil. It's the God, it's the devil. So they're not disputing that he can do these things. And there are other gods like Asclepius who are credited with healing people. So this does seem to be a world where things like that do seem to happen. So I think we perhaps need to put some of our skepticism to one side. But of course, as historians, we've no way of knowing whether these miracles happened or not.
Well, thank you very much. Well, that's a very helpful answer.
Yeah. I like to God forgive me. I like to pick on people. I understand historians, they have a way of what do you call it? to deal with uh, historical matters. I get that. I have no issues with that. Uh, but as my mentor used to say, the late Michael Heiser, well, it's very interesting that around the world we keep running into testimonies from every corner in the world that something is going on beyond the curtain. Okay, and I mean, I'm a Christian. Luis Jovel, he's a Christian. I don't want to speak for Dr. Bud here, but I suspect she is a Christian.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, thank you. So we are prone to the supernatural. I mean, I have no issues reading miracles in the Bible. Like for real. That's the butter thing. That's it's just adding something really awesome to the story. I mean, I'm in line here with C.S. Lewis and talking here, but that's why I love those guys. But what I want to say is this, as Heiser used to say, it's very interesting around the world. We're getting testimonies from people. They are reporting something is going on, and we just need from all the thousands and thousands and thousands of testimonies, we just need one to be true to bust the paradigm, and that's where I'm at. But I understand historians, they don't deal with that because they want to be as accurate and honest as possible. That's fine. But me as a, because I'm not a scholar, so I have no I have no I don't have to deal with that. Okay, because you people, you're in
I think
academia.
that's where faith takes over, isn't it? I mean,
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
thing with historians is they deal with the usual, the ordinary. They get their information, they pile up the
Yeah.
facts, and they say what's likely to have happened. And
Yeah.
I think most historians are probably unlikely to suggest that miracle is the most likely thing to have happened. They're always going to say, there's some other explanation.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes there is no other explanation. Or as I've said, I think sometimes this is we're dealing with a world where these unexpected things that we would never expect to happen somehow do seem to happen, and as historians we have to be open to that. We have to be open to the fact that people did think that certain people in society had miraculous powers, and they don't seem to have been disabused of that idea. They're not stupid people. They seem to have thought there was plenty of evidence to back up their
Yeah.
ideas. Yeah.
I agree with that. Okay, Dr. Bun, we're gonna hit the second question. Though I think you already answered it. I'm not sure. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but basically it says something like that. What's an ancient bioe? Is that how you say in Greek? And why should we know about it to be better interpreters of Marx? Just if you can just rehash that.
Yeah. Yeah, so ancient bios just means a life. Sometimes I find it better to talk about life writing than biography, because the trouble with talking about ancient biography is that people think it's going to be like a biography today, and it's not in some
Exactly.
key ways. Because I mean, like a biography today, it's a sort of historical type narrative that's concerned with one person, usually cradle to the grave, but not always. Sometimes, particularly in the case of a teacher, it might have his education, but it might sort of focus on his teaching and his sort of ministry, and then death, as you have in the case of Jesus. But what's really surprising, I think, about ancient biography is that it has two main focuses. One is to uncover the character of an ancient person, and the character is what's really important. And the reason for that is because it has a moral purpose. So the point is to uncover somebody's character and then persuade other people that this is a character worth following, worth emulating. So it's like offering a person as a sort of a moral example. So
Hmm.
you write a life of Jesus, and then you say, this is the kind of character he was. He was a compassionate, he was pious, he was commanding, he was all of these things. And those of us who follow him need to try and emulate those qualities in our own lives. And I think that's the thing that modern biography doesn't really have. We don't tend to be, sometimes we do, but most sort of proper academic biographies, at any rate, they're not passing moral judgments. They're not sort of saying, and they're not describing their characters as one-sidedly virtuous, in the same way that ancient biographers do. I mean, it's very much about kind of learning from the example of this life. It's actually very similar type stuff in Victorian biographies. A life of Horatio Nelson would probably hold him up as this great, courageous, patriotic person that all young boys ought to try to be like. So it's a little bit like that kind of sort of old-fashioned biography, but and obviously they're writing well before Freud and well before anybody thought that your relationship with your parents or your first, love interest would sort of have an effect on you. So characters tend to be quite fat as well, because they're the embodiment of virtues and things like that.
Well, I just find that interesting that even today the moral thing, it's something prevalent even in religious circles. I mean, I remember within my family, because I was raised in a Christian home. I'm pretty sure Jovel he was as well. And basically, my mom would gather all the people just to have the devotional thing, and my mom would go with the moral thing. Okay, well, so what's the moral thing that we need to take away today from this lesson, Bible lesson? Okay, it's something that is still persistent, even in the Gospels. Okay, even in the Gospel, and you can hear it from preachers. They go inside.
But I think Helen made a point that was the main idea, one of the two main ideas.
It's something that's my point.
That's it. But and this is a pagan form of writing. So this is amongst
okay.
as well.
Shocking.
So what I'm saying is that the Christians are appropriating this because it fits their purposes very well. This interest in morality and what would Jesus do? Let's look to the life of Jesus and then kind of get our morality from Jesus. And that's not something that Jewish writers do much. We don't have any biographies in the Hebrew Bible. We have
That's very interesting.
We have, I suppose, biographical episodes. There's the story of Abraham, the story of Moses, the story of David, but they're all part of a much larger story that's to do with God and God's relationship with Israel. Even when you have a book that's got the name of a person on it, like Isaiah, the prophet, it's still not really a life of Isaiah. It's Isaiah as the channel of God's oracles to his people, or a book like Esther. Again, it's not really a biography of that person. So Jews don't seem to have gone in for biography writing too much, apart from Philo of Alexandria. He is one of the few Jewish biographers we have, and he wrote a life of Moses. He wrote sort of various other biographies about the patriarchs, but by and large, Jews don't really seem to have gone down the biographical route. It's very much a pagan thing that Christians have then kind of made their own, I think.
And I guess the Philo was going by imagination, most likely.
What in his life? Well, I mean, it's a really interesting text because it's very, very Hellenistic, and it's a beautiful example of Greek biography writing, actually. But it's but very much goes down the route of, here is Moses. He was an exemplary person, and we should follow his lead. We should mold our lives on the life of Moses, because he was a great upholder of the law. So that's very much sort of Philo's line in that. But but it's strange how little Jews actually seem to have been. You don't get a life of the Hasmonean kings or any of the people from Qumran, or later on when you have the rabbis. You don't get lives written of the rabbis. It just seems to be a thing that Jews don't do very much.
So bios, Helen. So moral. There were two things, moral and the
Yeah,
other one,
it's concerned with character.
character.
It's
Moral and
to
character.
lay out the life and character of a person, and then from that to move on to the moral dimension, to say,
Okay.
imitate this. That the whole point of laying out the life is to say this is a life you should imitate.
So it's
Dr.
like if we
Bona,
write a life of Helen or bios of Helen, we aspire to be academics. So first we see how you study, and then we follow from that. Something like
Yeah,
that.
well, exactly. I mean, not that
Sorry to put
the
you
life,
in.
but exactly that would be what you. So, and you'd also, you'd be selective. You wouldn't say, oh well, there was a time Helen just couldn't really, Helen wanted to go and watch the television rather than write her essay. You would just write at the time when Helen wrote her essays, and Helen revised for her exams, and Helen did well in this course and that course, and you don't say all the things that don't fit in with your thesis very well. And then of course the idea is, be like her, study hard, do your stuff, and then we can all be together and we can all be good little academics. But I mean, I think that's helpful in showing that ancient biographers, they were interested in history, but not in the same way that we are.
Exactly.
They weren't.
Thank you for saying that.
They were the authors of the Gospels are just going to tell you the good things about Jesus.
Exactly.
They want you to know. They're not going to tell you anything that may not fit in with their view, or anything that's a little bit negative about him. So it's all it's very selective in terms of what they put into their account.
And that's okay. And that's okay because everybody else was the same at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
that's
the
what you do.
Normal convention. I need to say this. I need to say two things. The first one that really struck me as a surprise, and I'm being honest, is the thing about being a pagan thing, about that dimension, Dr. Bunn. I mean, my pastor, he already passed away, but my former pastor he listened that Dr. Bunn just said, he would fade away. Like, what? Is that from pagan? Yes, it is. And the other thing that I need to say is about the history thing. Dr. Bond, we modern people often find ourselves imposing our own criteria and concepts and terms upon those ancient texts. Do you think is that a fair thing to do on our part?
No, it's not. And I think modern, and because our view of history is very much a post-Enlightenment, sort of post-18th century thing. So we have the idea now that unless something happened, it's not true. So if I said I did something this morning and you found out that I hadn't, then you would say that that's of no value whatsoever. Whereas people in the past, before they had Google and things like that, you couldn't check things very, how did you know some of things? You heard this story from that person, that story from that person, and you didn't have a way of checking. You just had to sort of make up your mind depending on how reliable you thought people were. But I think more importantly, they had an idea that poetry can be true. Poetry sometimes is more true than events. And so what matters is, so you could, for example, tell a story about Jesus showing great authority, or the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. That's a story that I am a bit skeptical as to whether that really happened. I think it's a mixture of the story of Elisha in the Old Testament feeding the 100 soldiers, and it's got bits of the Moses and the manna in the wilderness story mixed in. And it's got bits of the Eucharist mixed in it too, because Jesus looks up to heaven and blesses the stuff. So I think that's a kind of a mixed up story that's probably invented about Jesus. But what it says about Jesus is that Jesus is the sort of person who could, like Moses, feed thousands of people, that he was sort of the divine representative, that he's this great benefactor. It's hard up against the story of King Herod's horrible banquet where poor old John the Baptist loses his life. And again, you just sort of see that Jesus is the real king, the real regal figure in all of this. So I think that there's lots of stuff there that is profoundly true. In that, it is true, even if the story didn't happen. And I think that's something that we don't always grasp nowadays in our sort of modern culture. If we say something probably didn't happen historically, then we think it's further value. I think that in the ancient world, poetry and literature and imagination was actually conveyors of truth.
Thank you for that, Dr. Bond. Okay, this is a book for everybody in the audience there. This is a book that recently came out, and our dear Dr. Bond, she's got a book chapter here, and I'm looking at it right there, which is I'm not sure if I can zoom in this thing, but basically her book chapter goes like, Mark as a biography, bios of a philosopher. Please. That's another, I mean, much a good bit of what she got in her book, the first biography of Jesus. She is also applying that info there in that book chapter. So if you're interested, you can go and check that out very quick. So, Dr. Bond, I apologize, but when I'm listening to a scholar, the scholar speaking, my mind is going like at the speed of light, like just throwing questions and questions and questions, which I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Luis Jovel happens the same thing. I mean, we for some weird reason we operate that way. I don't know why, but the thing is that you mentioned something, and I promise this is my last extra questions to go to the third question because we want to value your time. Many people, and forgive me, I'm an honest guy. I try to be as honest as possible. I don't go to church for now for some personal reason. Please don't get me wrong. I don't hate the church. I have nothing against. I'm just that I'm very critical of religion. That's the reason behind my motto in my podcast. I'm a believer. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. But I'm a very critical guy, and that doesn't with me hearts and minds along the day. But at least it's me. Okay. So my question to you is this: many people in the pew are, for many reasons, they tend to shrink when they hear something like, you can find fiction in the Bible, and they just can't stand it because I understand they see the Bible as the Word of God, the inspired Word of God, and so on. But me personally, through the journey of my faith, I have come to realize that that's okay. It's something. I mean, you just mentioned something about Elisha and the bird, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. That probably that didn't happen. Fine. But I need to understand why the author put it right there. What's the purpose?
Yeah.
So what would you say to people who is very sensitive to this kind of statements, and because they typically go and they burn you at the stake literally if you go and say that. So what would be your advice?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to this idea of, modern ideas of history just being very different to ancient ideas of history. And it's us who's got the problem, because we think if a thing didn't happen, then it's not true. Ancient people had a broader sense of what was true. I mean, this is the play. The ancient world is where you get all the myths. The myths to do with the gods, and people didn't necessarily think that the myths were true, as in they happened, but they think that they express some truth about who the gods are. It tells you something about relationship of the gods' relationship to humans, what the gods value, what the gods are interested in protecting, and so stories that can tell you things that are really important. And I think it's the same with Jesus, that even if some of these stories aren't historically accurate, and we just don't know, and probably the gospel writers themselves didn't know about some of these stories. I mean, they've had 40 years of being passed around from one person to the other, but they're included in the gospels because they say something really profound about Jesus, and something that the gospel authors thought was profoundly true. So I think the problem with sort of modern discussion of this is that people sometimes say, oh, well, I don't think that happened, therefore, you know, there's nothing of value in that story. And I think that's the wrong way to talk about it. I mean, in a way, the question of whether these things happened or not is probably one of the least important questions. I think the evangelists would have thought that. It's a little bit, I sometimes to, you know, with if somebody dies and you write an obituary, and quite often you get these stories. The stories circulate about particularly great men that, you know, there'll be some story that he used to do this or he did this one time. And you have your doubts as to whether it's actually historically true or not. But somehow it just kind of perfectly sums up the kind of person that they were. And so you think, yeah, I'm going to put that in because, you know, whether or not it's, you know, whether or not it happened, it's actually true in what it tells us about the person. And I think that's the kind of thing that the evangelist is doing.
Thank you. Luis Jovel, any comments so far?
No, because actually what she's saying is right into your next question.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Luis, he's got the power to see invisible things. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so following that, the third question here, Dr. Bond, chapter 3 is about Mark the biographer, wherein you tackle stuff like pre-Markan traditions, Mark's structure, and authorial voice, among other things. Can you give us an orderly and substantive overview of this section?
Yeah, so what I was trying to do in that chapter was to look at, you know, what do the authors of the Gospels look like when we think of them as biographers? And so, I mean, one of the things is level of educational sort of background. I mean, to write a biography, you've got to be pretty well educated. This is not just somebody who can write a few words. This is somebody who has literary aspirations as well. You know, you have a good level of education here. And so I sort of took that as a starting point. And then what else have you got? Yeah, pre-Markan traditions. People get very, very excited about pre-Markan traditions and trying to find Mark's sources. But in the end, I think there's no much point in doing that because I just don't think we know. I think it's highly likely that he had sources and traditions that he drew on, but I also think that he probably completely rewrote them. And, you know, the kind of, you get this in commentators who, you know, try to say, well, there's this little bit is from Mark, and then he's added this, and he's working with an earlier tradition. I think I just have my doubts about the usefulness of
how in the world do you know anyways?
And sometimes if Mark doesn't seem to make sense, it's probably because of our problem rather than Mark. You know, sometimes you get the impression from commentators that they think they're a lot cleverer than Mark and know a lot more about Mark than Mark did himself. But I don't think that's very likely. And then some of the things I looked at in that chapter were also things that are different about the Christian lives of Jesus compared to pagan biographies. So one of the striking things is the lack of authorial voice. So in a pagan biography, you will always have a little prologue, a little bit like you get in at the start of Luke's gospel. You know, the biographer will introduce themselves, will say, I'm this person, I'm going to write about the life of so-and-so because they're a great philosopher or whatever it is. And all the way through, you get this sense of I am the author. I am telling you about this. Whereas in the Christian Gospels, you don't get that at all, apart from that very short prologue in Luke, and it is very short compared to most ancient biographies.
In a little bit in John too, when John calls himself the beloved, I am the one saying the truth.
Yeah, that
very
little
little.
tiny bit, yeah. But in general, they're just sort of, you know, they're a narrator who, an omniscient narrator. They tell you everything, but you don't get a sense of who they are. And that's exactly the same way that the Jewish scriptures are written. So the Hebrew Bible is, you know, it's all from the point of view of an omniscient narrator, and the person writing, you know, the person writing, say 1 Samuel, doesn't introduce himself at the beginning. I am so and so. I've done all this work and I've found out all this information, and now I'm going to tell you all about the prophet Samuel. You don't get any of that, just straight in. And I think, you know, that's it's things like that that make the Christian Gospels a little bit different to pagan biographies, and also the fact that they have no account of Jesus's appearance. I think that again is something that it's getting from the Hebrew scriptures. Although you do sometimes hear about people, you know, being beautiful or having lovely eyes, or, you know, being head and shoulders taller than anyone else. In general, the Hebrew Bible doesn't give many physical descriptions, and I think that's perhaps one of the reasons why the Gospels also don't describe Jesus, even though at the time it was actually quite common to give a very detailed picture of what people looked like, and it was assumed, you know, that a big nose meant something, eyebrows that met in the middle was actually a good thing, being tall, being small, you know, all of these sort of physical attributes were thought
being bald. Well,
yeah, well, I'm sure that was one of them too. But yeah.
Okay, that was unexpected.
well, I want to take some credit, but so Helen, so how do you deal with the tradition of papayas and papillas, and I'm saying in Spanish,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
that he wrote from the memoirs of Peter?
Peter.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to make of that, isn't it? I mean, obviously, one of the things PBS is doing is to say the Gospels are authoritative. They're wanting to give them standing. I wouldn't completely disregard the idea that Mark knows some kind of tradition connected with Peter. I quite like the idea that Mark was written in Rome. That's not necessarily everybody's idea.
Yeah.
It's a traditional idea, and I still think it's as good a place as any. And if the tradition is right, and Peter did end up in Rome, and Peter was martyred in Rome, you know, it's not impossible that Mark may have known some of the stories of Peter. But I think where I would want to sort of nuance that a bit is that if Mark knew stories of Peter from the 60s, and Mark is probably writing in the 70s, in really quite a different, a changed climate now, you know, Jerusalem's fallen, the temple has fallen, things are different. I still think even if Mark knew some of Peter's teaching, he would write it up in the way he wanted to. I don't think he would necessarily feel that he had to, you know, write down exactly what he remembered from Peter, whether or not it fitted in with the message he wanted to give his gospel.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. It's getting good. I personally like this question, Dr. Bond. Please forgive me. It's because I like to see. I mean, I don't know how to say it in English, but I can say it in Spanish. But Dr. Bond won't understand it.
I would understand.
I can try to translate if you want.
Yeah, please. No, what I'm trying to say is that I mean, I think and Dr. Bond, she can better attest to this. Part of the essence of academic, what do you call it, discussions, is that you are sharpening each other out forever, if I can put it that way. I mean, because you're putting your material out there, not to self-authenticate it, as Larry Hurtado used to say, throwing into YouTube or internet just to self-authenticate yourself. No, you are putting your views, your interpretations, and everything, and so that people, just trained people, okay, like you, can even challenge it, or improve it, or okay, I'm with you, sign me up. So, Dr. Bond, here's the question: what kind of criticism has this view of ancient bios faced, and to what extent do you tackle those pushbacks in this book?
Oh, so criticism of the BIOS kind of identification generally, you mean, and
That is
then
correct.
how am I? Well,
Not criticism at all.
it's difficult. It's difficult to say. I mean, I you see, one of the things that that one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book. Oh, sorry.
Oh, very British, very British.
Is that British? Okay.
James Bond.
That was unexpected too. So let's move on.
Hello, Ninan. Hello.
Okay. I will continue the interview with Joel.
Yeah, I think Chichi needs to get that, but it's
Yeah.
important to see that, like you said, it's mostly accepted within the guild, regarding the people accept that the Gospels are bios, but
Yeah.
there's some pushbacks, and mainly the people who have pushbacks, uh, uh, from my view, is that they are the ones that don't want to accept um, that these gospels or these writings could, how can I say, could play an important part in a new religion, in the sense of Christianity. They still want to hold on to that thought, even though they may be against Christianity. They still want
Yeah.
to hold on to the thought that they are one-sided, and they have a specific aim, which every single bios or biography has. Sorry, I just trying to make a bad impression of you. I totally fail. I totally fail. And let me tell you, Helen, my wife and I, I've been in holidays. This is the last day of my holidays in Australia, and we've been watching James Bond, all the movies. We started from the beginning, so we're up to Roger Moore.
Oh, you've not got very far then.
Yes.
Yeah, no, sorry, my daughter's in America, and
No worries. That's okay. That didn't
just
happen. I
phoning,
mean, I have no
but
idea what happened.
I missed her anyway. But yeah, my ringtone is James Bond.
Yes, nice.
What else? I'm sorry,
I'm
I
a
don't
big,
know.
big,
I don't
big
know
fan
if you
here.
can edit that out.
I want to take now. If you ever have me on your podcast, I wanna take the time machine. I wanna go to meet Sean Connery when he was young.
Yeah. He was the real deal. Yeah.
Yeah, he's most people.
Yeah.
I actually quite like Roger Moore, but and what's his name?
My mom was in love with Roger Moore. Remember when I was a little
Yeah.
boy, she used to say, "He's so handsome." Oh,
Yeah. I think he's more handsome than
Okay.
Connery. Anyway, there we go. So we were talking about bios.
Mm.
Okay. This is
You're
good.
talking about criticism. Yeah, I mean, one of the problems I thought, and the things that I wanted to address in the book was that we seem to have gone round and round. The question is all about, are the Gospels biographies? Are they not biographies? Yes, no. Yes, no. And that just didn't seem very productive to me. You know, one person writes a book to say yes, and then somebody else writes a book to say no, and it goes round and round. So it seems to me very obvious that this is in some way a life. I mean, how could it not? I mean, it's about the life of Jesus and his death. So it's more interesting, I think, to think about how would the how would an audience have responded to this text if they thought it was a life, you know, and how would they have read it if they thought it was a life, and questions like that, rather than just to kind of to say is it or is it not, because I mean we all know that genre is very fluid and flexible.
Mhm.
Mark, I think, is mainly a life, but it's got little bits of a apocalyptic in it, you know, chapter 13 in particular. It's also elements of drama in it, particularly the tragic when it comes to his death. So it's got bits and pieces from other genres in it too. So I mean, you know, it's a mixture of things, but I do think it's largely a life of Jesus. And I mean, my book too has been criticized by some people for suggesting that the gospel is not historically true in every respect. But then I kind of expect that. So
Okay, look at this comment. Look at this comment. I don't know what you're talking about more, but he was one of my favorite out of seven.
So you don't
it's
get
actually
any pushback from the people here, Helen. They're with you in this with Rachel.
No,
yeah.
my favorite is Sean Connery, the original, and Daniel Craig. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
What was the guy before Daniel Craig? The Irish guy, Piers.
Well, there are rumors that Henry Cavill will be the guy, but they are rumors, nothing
No,
more.
Who
I
knows?
can.
Maybe Merv. Merv, maybe the next James Bond. Merv.
yeah, no, Piers Brosnan. I quite like Piers
Yes,
Brosnan
Pierce
actually.
Brosnan.
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
Mm.
yes.
I'm super biased. No, but he was. I mean, he did a good. Yeah, definitely.
And let me tell
Okay.
you, Helen,
Thank you.
too. The pastor that we
Yeah.
have in our church, where I'm Baptist, our pastor is from northern England, also from the east of. I don't remember which village, but he's so you sound very much like him. But although
Oh,
he says that
really?
even from village to village, you guys can pick up the different accent.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't tell village for village, but I can tell, you know, the towns and things in the northeast
Mm.
of England. I can usually kind of place people fairly accurately. Though, I mean, I've been away for such a long time that I don't really sound like northeast of England anymore.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. Let's hit the last question. This is good. Again, Dr. Bond, thank you for being here, joining us in this podcast. I still don't believe it. so,
Thank you.
and of course, we hope this is not the last time you come onto the show. I had Crispin Fletcher Louis,
Oh yeah.
and I said to him, we were talking about his book, The Divine Heartset. And I said to him, Crispin, I wish I could be there living next door so I can invite you some meal and we can talk for hours. And he said, well, you're more than welcome to UK whenever you can come. Just come and we'll do it. So we're going to add Dr. Bond to the mix. That would
Okay,
be
you can come back
great.
to my house too.
Though I'm not sure if you guys live next door.
No,
Probably
I
you
don't think so.
don't.
My
Yeah.
sister, who lives in Sydney, she almost every year goes to the UK. She
Oh,
lives in Sydney. Almost every year she goes to the UK. She loves the UK.
yeah.
She was born in the wrong country, she says.
Okay. I want to throw this. This is more as a sidebar before I hit the last question, Dr. Bond, because I think it's a very important thing, and I think you touched on that on the critical textual critical thing. Mark one I think it is. Is it Son of God or Christ?
Mm,
So, what's your take on it? Is it which one is it?
It's I think Son of God is probably a later edition.
mm.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
think it opens the beginning of beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and then as
Huh.
it was written. So I think God is a later edition. I mean, it's fine because Mark is very keen on the idea of Jesus as Son of God, but it sort of spoils things a bit, because I think the big reveal is with the
You're
baptism.
thinking like an author here. Yeah.
But this is a literary text, and I think
Exactly. Yeah. I
Mark is
agree.
quite good on things like this, so he has the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and then he has John the Baptist appears, and then Jesus gets baptized, and then suddenly this voice comes, this is this is my beloved son, and you think, whoa, okay, this is new information.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, I think it's perfectly fine to have it up at the front, son of God, but I don't think it's original. And I think it would be very odd for ancient artists to have missed it out on the front, on the third line. I mean, it just unlikely. It's more likely that some copies just didn't have it, and they're probably the more original ones.
But I guess also goes to everybody's like or everybody. Some people may think that is having a go at the emperor, like Jesus within empire, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
also see in the centurion's declaration when Jesus died, truly he is the son. This one is the son of
yeah,
God.
yeah.
So yeah, at the end also it's shocking to read that. To me, I always go back to that. It's shocking to see he's this centurion as
Yeah.
a servant of Caesar saying that. So
Yeah, but actually, that's another thing you get in a lot of ancient biographies.
Mhm.
You get, I mean, it's just a common theme. The executioner suddenly kind of saying, oh, this was, a good philosopher, or this was a virtuous man, or something like that. You get the theme of the friendly executioner in Plato's Phaedo, and the life of Appius of Tyana. Again, you get a friendly sort of jailer, and again, that sort of idea that that even the people putting these people to death somehow recognized greatness in them is quite a common theme.
It's a positive motif.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Bond, before we go and hit the last question, I need to ask you the following thing. What do you know about the Enoch seminar?
I know that there is such a thing, and I think they've got a meeting in a couple of weeks, and I think I may be talking about. I think they've got something on Mark's Gospel within Judaism. I think I'm supposed to be doing a very short paper. I need to find. I've got vaguely something written in my calendar.
No worries. Yeah, so we're gonna have a word from them now. I usually do this during the mid time here, so I forget that because we got Dr. Bond here, so I just forget.
You reminded me. Here in this book.
Yes.
Here in this book.
Philo of Alexandria, I think. Isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes.
The
You're in this book.
Jesus. Yeah.
Jason, many books.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go here. A word from the Enoch seminar. Here we go. Okay. So you may be, for those who may be asking, why is this guy playing such a thing during this interview? Well, it's because we are part of an initiative to bring the Enoch seminar into Latin America, into Spanish people. Those who are interested, and this interview is part of that, okay? Because we're trying to translate it, put it in your own language, within your
Yes.
range, okay? Because we, Luis Jovel can attest to this. There is a much needed effort here in Latin America about people who have a keen interest in scholarship, legitimate scholarship, but they can't because they don't have access due to the language barrier. We want to bridge that gap, okay? And
And
I'm pretty sure,
sometimes the churches look down on you if you really want to do some. Or Latin. I don't live in Latin America. I left when I was 10, but but I know how it is. I grew up in the USA. I knew I was in a Latin American church and also was here in a Latin American church for quite a while. But you're looked down upon. Like an example is that the three people who have studied theology here in Melbourne from Latinos, Latin Americans, we cannot go to Spanish speaking churches. Why? Because they see us with suspicion. Because they said that
wow,
because we know either Greek or Hebrew, and the pastors who most of the time haven't finished even their own high schools,
Yeah.
they see us as a threat.
Yeah.
So that's is multiplied in the whole of Latin America. So if you're if even if you take a small course, they look at you with suspicion. So what we're trying
hmm,
to do, Mer is an editor of the Enoch seminar, the Spanish speaking part. I'm also an editor, but Mer is the one that's very very active. That's the what we're trying to do. I also work with some of the Spanish speaking publishing houses. I recommend books. Maybe I'll think about one of the books I'm
you
going to
need to
recommend for
recommend
you.
Dr.
Yes,
Bonds.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's very so it's an uphill battle to make Latin America get out of this fundamentalistic way of thinking and not going liberal as they think. Like what you said regarding bios, some people may run away from it, but yeah, but
Yeah.
it's an uphill battle. But I think it's somehow the tide is turning. At least in the USA, there's some other agencies that are recruiting, are adding more Bible institutes, and some beginning some seminaries who are starting off with their Spanish speaking
Mm.
um, um, arm. Fula, for example,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, they have Samuel Pagan and other people. So, what we're doing here, Helen, is we're both Merv and I, we are very excited to promote this in Latin America
Yeah.
Have you?
to get ourselves out of the. I have a postgraduate in theology, and that actually puts a mark on you in certain circles. But
That's amazing.
yes,
Unfortunately.
yes.
Yeah. Have
Oh,
you
look
seen
at
that?
that. My British
Have you,
accents came out and I failed miserably.
have you seen the SBL's Bible Odyssey? You know, they
Yes,
have,
yes,
you know, they've started to have a few articles in
yes.
Spanish.
Translations. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
So I'm very glad. I mean, I point out people to those sort of places. So, but
yeah,
in the Enoch seminar, Gabriel, the first time that he did it in Spanish was
Gabriele
great,
Boccaccini. Yeah.
great. Yes, it was so great. And
Yeah.
I just hope that more people see it. But like I said, it's an uphill battle, and people you become an outcast in a sense. But we're breaking in. We're breaking in.
good, good.
Mhm.
But as you know, as they say, brick and stone may break my bones, but words won't hurt me.
Mhm.
So this is also a commitment for Dr. Bond, for her to learn to speak Spanish. Imagine Dr.
Yeah,
Bond speaking Spanish. Oh, lovely. Okay, I'm imagining that. Yeah. No, but seriously, on a more serious note, this is part of the reason we're doing this kind of interviews. We are bringing the scholars, just like Luis, he's doing in his own channel. We're doing this because we want to bridge the gap. Okay, and that's why I appreciate scholars like Dr. Bond that they willingly. I mean, these people, they are very busy people. Like, no kidding, and but they managed to and I was let me tell you, true confessions, Dr. Bond, I was a little worried the last time we interchanged an email, and I thought, okay, this is not looking good. That interview is looking like it's not gonna happen, and I was a
why?
little bit afraid.
Why?
Yeah, yeah, because of the schedules and everything, but
Um,
gladly that we make it. And that's why we're doing this. That's why we're
Yeah.
doing this. So, Dr. Bond, let's go with the last question so we can wrap it up. And here we go. So, in the last chapters, you talk about the life of Jesus, other characters, and finally, the death of Jesus. In light of what we've been discussing, in what ways does the framework of ancient biography help us better read these sections in Mark's gospel?
Yeah, well, and the big areas here. So, in terms of other characters, I think the thing with ancient biography is it focuses completely and utterly on the central character, and that's again what you get in Mark's gospel, as Richard Burridge has shown. Almost every verb in Mark has Jesus as its subject, so he's very much a central character. When you get other characters, though, nearly always what they're doing is sort of allowing something in Jesus' character to the fore. So these characters are not interesting in their own right, and I think you get that particularly with the disciples. Although the audience do feel a certain amount of sympathy with the disciples, I think the disciples are largely there to kind of to tell you something about Jesus. So early on, they're sort of part of his group, and then they keep asking questions, and that's really to allow Jesus the space, keep on explaining his teaching. I mean, the teaching is strange. It's completely countercultural. The idea that you should make yourself a servant, be last, deny yourself. People would have thought that was madness. But so that the disciples keep asking questions so that Jesus can then continue to tell his to give his teaching. And then at the end, the disciples all run away. And that's really, I think, because the spotlight is even more intensely on Jesus, because he is the only one who can die and redeem people, ransom people from all that enslaved them, and establish this kind of renewed covenant with God. So I think we need to be sort of aware that other characters are not really there in their own right. They're there to tell you something about Jesus. And then when it comes to Jesus's death, I think in a lot of biography, death is the central bit, because there was this feeling that you could fake it during your life. You could pretend to be virtuous, even if you weren't. But at the moment of death, that's you really get an insight into a person's real character at the moment of death. And so a lot of biographies, I mean, Suetonius's biographies of the 12 Caesars, it's interesting that they all have the kind of death that they deserve. So the bad emperors get bad deaths. They're crying, they're sniveling, they're running away, they're in denial. The good emperors go to death, and they have this noble death. And so I think Mark is quite interesting because Jesus had a good death in Mark's gospel. He died, my God, why have you forsaken me? But I think what he does do in Mark's gospel is he has the death that is complete. It's a slave's death, but it's complete abandonment, and it is the ultimate in what it means to deny yourself, to not be first, to embrace being last, to be a slave, to be a servant. And so I think this idea of an example is important. So on one level, Jesus is something special. His death redeems people, but at the other side, his death is an example of what it means. This is the ultimate act in what it means to deny yourself. And I think Mark kind of runs with that. And it's the perfect, all that teaching he was giving the disciples on the way to Jerusalem, in that middle section, 8 to 10, where he keeps saying, be last, be a servant. This is now the kind of the ultimate example of what that means.
Yeah. No, especially the death of Jesus. Huh? I'm big on the death of Jesus. I think myself is a radical. I mean, his gospel is radical, as one scholar put it. Jesus, this guy is doing things upside down. Like I mean, who wants to be the servant? I mean, we're
Exactly.
human beings, and we don't want that. Yeah, we
And
don't
in the
want to do
Roman
that.
world, everybody in the Roman world, men, manly men, are striving for glory and power,
Yeah,
authority, and
the legend. Yeah,
the
yeah,
alpha male is very much the thing in the Roman world. And so to say in that environment, don't go after power and glory, go
yeah,
after being a servant. That's completely mad. And anyone thought that was completely mad. So we're just hearing the gospels nowadays that we just think, oh yeah, deny yourself, yeah, pick up your cross, yeah, yeah, that's normal, but it's not. It's not normal at all. It's hugely, extravagantly countercultural.
yeah. So here, we got Gregorio Villarreal. He said, "Thank you, very guys, very much." Also, we got Sick Truth, Shalom from Oklahoma. Shalom. Yeah. What is that?
Mm,
Oh, it's the states.
Oklahoma
mm,
State,
Yeah.
yes,
yeah.
sweet.
Luis, do you have any comments on
Well,
Dr. Bond's response
oh,
to this question?
I was going to ask you, but this is a tricky question because this is the last question. But I just want to go a bit further than chapter 15. I want to go to 16. Are you with
Yeah.
Mark Goodacre regarding 9 to 20, the last chapters? Where do you fall on that? Are
Shorter
they
ending, longer ending.
the
Yeah.
long ending, short ending, or are we? I remember. I don't know if you've seen the movie. Um, this movie that the pyramids they come from somewhere else in the universe. Uh,
Oh, I don't think I've
actually,
seen it.
yes. How did they get there? Yeah, and I forget I forget right now. It's only one. It's guy. But anyway, so they want to get back, but they need to find another like a writing. So when they're trying to put it back, they don't. The last part has fallen off. Has fallen off. So they don't know how to get back.
Oh,
Um, Stargate. I don't know if you remember that.
right, right.
Okay.
You remember that thing when
No,
they
that's
meet. Well,
I haven't seen it.
I recommend you to watch it. So they need to have like a writing like some hieroglyphic for them to go back, and they find half of it, but the last half fell off, so they cannot go back. So they have to figure it out how to do it. So it's same thing with Mark. I guess Mark 16.
Yeah, I think Mark 16:8 is the last bit. Mark, all the way through, I think Mark is mysterious. Never quite gives you the answers you're hoping for. Everything's sort of hinted at, but you're not entirely sure. So you've had the young man at the tomb. He said, why are you looking? Jesus has been raised. The women run away. And I think that's the end of the story.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
everything that comes after is later addition, and I mean, we can you know far more about criticism and stuff than I do.
Yes,
I
yes.
think that are later, they put them later than the first century. So, and certainly following just seems to be a summary of the other gospel.
Me personally, I just find it interesting that many of the things that you find in those additional verses, like being bitten by venomous serpents, drinking whatever, or
The
and
Appalachian.
demons,
That's in
and
Appalachia.
yeah,
They love it in the U.S.
yeah, but that's the thing. I just find it interesting that you later on the Book of Acts, you run
Yeah.
into all this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's an author who knows all the there's stuff about Mary Magdalene in there too. It comes from John, the stuff that comes from Luke, especially the people on the way to Emmaus, and like you say, there's bits from Acts. So I think it's a later author who now that you have other gospels and they sort of they carry on with resurrection appearances and things like that, and in Matthew's case that nice little sort of lo, I'm with you to the end of the age. Somehow Mark is seeming a little bit sort of brutally brutally short at the end, and so they just add something on to make it sort of more in line with the other gospels. But I don't think that's original, and I don't think even that there's something that Mark wrote that has been lost. I think 60.
Then I'm in your camp.
And one last thing.
Yeah, in a biography, what else do you need to say? He's been he's been killed, he's been buried, and then now there's sort of strong hints of the resurrection and Jesus sitting at the right
Yeah.
hand of the Father. What more? Where do you stop a thing like this? So
So it's overkill.
yeah, exactly.
Using that phrase. So I wanted to ask you about authorship because I was trying to remember. So in chapter 14, the young man that runs away naked. So was that when I was a kid? Let me tell
Yeah.
Helen,
What's up with that guy?
my mom used to I have to mop the floor, and I always go to her room and stop, and I read marks since I'm a little kid, and that thing really caught my
Yeah,
when I was 8 years old. Why is this
yeah,
young man? And when I was thinking young man, I was thinking a little kid like me,
yeah.
running. So what do you think is happening there? Is
Well,
he revealing
And
well, I
also
was
himself?
because it
told,
looks like a thrown away statement. Oh, the naked guy. There you go.
yeah.
Deal with
I
it.
was told, when I was younger, I was told it was Mark himself. That
Yes,
was
me too.
Mark's way of
Whoa.
saying,
Whoa.
I was there. And
Okay.
when I teach Mark's passion narrative to my students, it's
Hmm.
that the naked guy is the thing that they all want to do their essays on. So I get
I
all these
mean, it's
essays on the
unavoidable.
naked guy.
Yeah. It's
But
unavoidable.
I mean, I think there's lots of really interesting lines there. But I think it's at this stage of the narrative, everybody is
Hmm.
running away from Jesus. So
Mm.
you have the disciples who flee, then you've got the naked guy, then you've got the crowd in front of Pilate. You've just got one character after another sort of disappearing. So I think the naked guy is part of this stream of characters who are just rejecting Jesus. And
Hmm.
so he would rather be shamed by
Yes,
running
that's what I was
to
gonna say. Because in a
the
Greco-Roman society, being naked is so
yeah,
shameful. So
exactly.
he
He'd
wants to
rather
save his
do that.
skin. Mm.
Yeah, but
Mm.
I have also read, and I can't remember who it was. It might have been Andrew Lincoln. Somebody was saying, had a really good point that he turns up in this syndons. It's the same word as is used later on in Greek for
Hmm.
the shroud later on,
Mm.
sundarion. And he's wearing this linen shroud, and it's almost like he's almost got it. He's
Hmm.
almost kind of ready for death there. But then when they grab him, he runs away, and he doesn't
Mm.
doesn't follow Jesus anymore. But I think the main thing that he's just part of this of character just
Mm.
reject Jesus. And
Okay.
Matthew
Yeah.
and Luke
Just
don't.
look at what this guy is proposing here. Seek truth. The writer displays this naked runaway as symbolic of the total abandonment of Jesus by the band of the disciples, who fled to escape the consequences of association with him.
Yeah, yeah, and have a
Okay, you need
difficult.
to peer review that. No,
Well,
I'm just kidding.
it's another character who is with the story, and
Yeah.
then who says faces of this. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got him sorted.
Dr. Bones' internet is glitching now. Okay,
Oh, is
he's
it?
back. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Now you're back. You're back on. No worries.
Oh, right.
Okay. I think that's a good note to end this interview. I'm glad. I mean, Jovel, I don't know what you got to say.
No, I'm very
I
glad.
had fun.
I said to Mara, I wanna meet Helen. I mean, I listen to her every week.
Well, it's been lovely to
Yeah.
talk to you both, and really interesting. And I wish you well with your projects and the Enoch project and
Thank
everything too.
you.
And it
We
sounds
wish
like
you
you're
the
doing great
same.
work. So carry up, keep it up,
Thank you very much.
and keep watching
So,
007.
Yes, yes, we'll
yeah,
finish.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Eventually, we'll finish. We'll finish.
Hey, I'm not kidding. I most of the time, but I'm kind of a bore. I binge watch the whole. I mean, just yeah. Like I don't get boring. Yes, that's something I like to do very much.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so
do you know, Helen? So sorry, Mary, but do you know, Helen, that after there was an Australian James Bond, the one in the movie where he gets married.
Yeah. What was
Yeah,
his
he was
name?
Australian.
On His Majesty's Secret Service,
Yes,
on
yes.
Her Majesty's Secret
He was
Service.
he was an
Wasn't it? What
Australian.
was his name? Yeah, no, you're right. There was. He didn't last long though, did he?
Only one, because the guy well, his agent said to him that secret agent movies were not gonna last, so he told him only to have one go. But anyway, that's
Oh well, never trust your agent.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
since okay, now we're geeking out here on James Bond, and we can do it. I own this podcast. No, I need to say this, because Dr. Bond, she's British. Okay, she must know this. But is it true that James Bond is based on a real figure? More specifically, the late Christopher Lee. Is that true, or is just popular?
No, I've not heard Christopher Lee. I've not heard that.
Yeah, I mean, he was a secret agent in during war, and
Oh, was
I
he?
remember one one interviewer asking about that, and he said if it was a very iconic statement. He was like, "Can you keep a secret?" That was Christopher Lee's question, and the guy was like, "Yes, I can," but he was like expecting to receive the answer, positive answer, and Christopher Lee goes like this. So can I. So that's what I have heard. So okay, maybe the myth will continue. Right there. Okay,
I
Dr.
heard that
Bond, it's been a
I heard that
pleasure.
Ian Fleming used to be in the Secret Service, and there's a guy
Yeah,
in England who has a channel who works with the military, and he does a lot of history things from England. And yeah, he says that Ian Fleming is his own memoirs, but he even said that he wasn't a womanizer as James Bond. He better
Well,
said that because it was the wife who killed him.
I know they're pretty bad from that point of view nowadays, aren't
Yes,
they?
yes.
yeah,
Nowadays.
yeah. Let's
Yeah,
scratch that. Okay,
yeah.
Dr. Bond, once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us. I had fun.
Yeah, me
Thank you
too.
very much.
I'd lovely to talk to you both.
Okay,
And
thank you
I
very
need
much.
to ask you, do you have something in the pipeline that we should be aware of? Some writing project, something?
Well, the one I mentioned with these four other women is called Crafting Life, the
Yeah.
early Christian engagement with the biographical tradition. That's well, we're only going to finish that at the end of next year. And I'm
Yeah.
writing a book on Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Mary Magdalene at the moment,
Ooh.
and also a commentary on Mark's Gospel. So I don't know when they'll come out because they're not written yet, but that's what I'm working on.
In Spanish,
Merv,
Mary, we said Maria.
Maria.
Maria,
Maria, yeah, there you
Merv,
go. Yeah.
two
Mer,
Marias. Yeah.
Mer, offer Helen the Latino version of the time machine, please.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
vote for
Dave
that.
might manage it, but I my German's kind of not too bad, but Spanish is not my thing. I've never learned any of it actually. So we did French at school and a little bit of German, but never any Spanish.
As you should.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody,
Well, then,
just to give you a heads up here, we have more interviews coming on. Remember, on June the 7th, Robin Faith Walsh is coming to the show to talk about her book on the New Testament in its Greco-Roman literary world.
that'd be
So
good.
it's along those lines that we've been talking today with Dr. Bunk from another perspective, okay? But it's a very interesting book. Also, we got the great and only Beverly Gabenta. She's coming to the show to talk
Calling
about
up
the
the big guns.
apocalyptic Paul, because I love apocalyptic. Yeah, she's coming to the show, and I'm really looking forward to that interview.
Good too. Wow, you've got some good shows
Yeah.
coming up.
Definitely. Okay, Jovel, do you got some last comments? Oh yeah.
When in Romans.
When in Romans, yeah.
Yes.
Also, by the way, a new book from her is coming out with Baylor University Press. I think it's a collected essays of her, but yeah, it's coming on November. I think it's November 25th. So keep an eye on that. Jovel, any last comments before we
No,
can wrap up?
I'm gonna try to I don't know, Helen, you can write to Merv, and if you want a specific book of yours to to be translated into Spanish, just tell Merv, write
That
to
would be
him, and
great.
I'll
Yeah.
pass that along to the publishing houses that I work with.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
That
Thank
Yeah.
you
that would be
very much.
great. Yeah. And when that happens, it's the end of the world because Jesus is coming. Okay, with that on mind, people, have a nice day. Take care. Until the next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.